Welcome to the West Virginia Case Podcast, hosted by Les Odell. Join us as we dive deep into all things strange, including Bigfoot, aliens, ghosts, and more. Pull up a chair and set for a spell. It's going to be a great time. Now, without further delay, let's get the show started.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey folks, welcome back to the West Virginia Case Podcast. Tonight we're going to have Damon Keys and some of his members of Outsider Paranormal. They're going to come on and talk about some stuff they've done, what they're into, some other things about the paranormal world and paranormal community. But before we get started, I want to send out some prayers and stuff for Bill Rigby and his wife Beth. Beth is having some health issues that she is, dealing with. I guess you say. I don't want to go into it, but we want to send out our prayers to Bill. Bill's a great friend of mine, and Bill, Beth, we love you, and we hope everything goes well. And with that, also, I want to say, if I happen to go off screen here for a couple minutes or a few seconds every so often, it's because I'm not feeling the best. I haven't felt very good for a few days, so I might have to go off and maybe cough or something. So if you see me pop off the screen, that's probably why. And also, if you want to come on to the show, you got something you want to share, something you want to talk about, send me an email at westvirginiacase304@yahoo.com. So with that being said, let's bring the guys on.
What's
Hey,
happening?
guys.
What's going on, Les?
Not a whole bunch. How you guys been?
Good, man. We've been good. Thanks for having us on the podcast. We've just we've been doing good. We've been quiet. We've been quiet for a little bit, and I know that some of our followers have been wondering what's been up, but we'll get into that during the show, I'm sure. But for the listeners and the viewers that aren't familiar with us, we are Outsider Paranormal SWPA. We are out of Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. We were founded, hard to believe, it's been 13 years ago now that we've been doing this together. And I looked at Fred to my right because Fred and we got this thing going. Like I said, 13 years ago, we all have had our experiences, and we'll touch base on those. But how we kind of got together was myself and Fred were actually cousins. He's my dad's first cousin. And we were at our family Christmas at my great grandma's house. And Fred was telling me that he was going to check out the Hillview Manor in Newcastle, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And he told my parents this at first, and my parents said, "Oh, you have to talk to Damon. He's been doing that ghost hunting thing, as they called it." And he's like, "Oh, I'll have to talk to him." So that evening we hooked up, and Fred says, "Well, do you want to go with me?" I was like, "Sure." It was my first time being able to go. I mean, I had been doing some things with my brother and his friends, but it was all local legends, lore, cemeteries, the stuff you do when you're a kid, just kind of fun little stuff. And so we hooked up that day, and later in January, we went on our first investigation as a team, and we've been together ever since. We've had different incarnations of our team over the years, but a few years ago now, we met up with, I've always known him, but we met up with Chuck and Kim Cruiser. Chuck was a friend of mine from years previously, and he'd actually reached out to me, I don't know, probably say 4 years ago, and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this paranormal thing. Where do you guys get your equipment?" And so being just, trying to help the paranormal community out, I said, "Here's where you look. You don't need a ton of fancy gadgets and gizmos when you get started, but here's an idea." And shortly thereafter, Chuck and Kim were kind of, what would you say, kind of just trying to find your way in the find your way in the field?
Yeah, we always had our own experiences and did things like you guys did whenever we were younger. Probably stuff that shouldn't say, in houses and abandoned houses. But yeah, her and we took a trip down to Gettysburg, and I just was looking for the right camera or something to take, just to have a better experience. And it just slippery slope. You start buying equipment, $1,000 here, $1,000 there.
Yeah. But so shortly thereafter, I'd say probably about a year after that, Chuck and Kim, I reached out to him and I was like, let's get together and have a meeting. Let's meet up. I want to talk to you guys. And we got together and we met up and we decided at that time, hey, listen, you guys have some things that we're looking for on our team, and we have some things that you're looking for in terms of connections and experience. I said, come on board. And that's when Outsider Paranormal became Outsider Paranormal SWPA. Chuck and Kim were Pursuit of Paranormal SWPA. So we kind of blended the names. That actually happened the day we decided to officially become a new name, an organization, whatever you want to say, was at one of Kevin Paul's haunted cons at the EQT Rec Center there.
Right.
And I think you were actually probably there that day, I believe.
I may have been. Yeah, I was there. I've been there a couple times. Yeah.
But we decided from that day that this is what we were going to do. And since then, we just ran with it, had a good time with it. It's been a blast being able to. The thing that I'll say when making a paranormal team that's going to work, and it may not work for everybody, but it's worked for us. I have found that over the years that I've surrounded myself with people that I'm able to trust with more with anything, because it's hard to believe somebody on their evidence, on their findings, on their research, even if you can't trust them. And I was lucky enough to be able to have friends and acquaintances, and now over time that have become best friends, who were able to join up with us and create what we are now. I mean, not to brag on them, but I'm thankful for my guys, and I'm thankful for everyone on my team, not just the guys that are here. You got Mark, you got Mike, you got Adam, you got Kim, you got Rick. I mean, we have a full team, and it's nice to be able to have that when you get and yeah. I mean, so when you're able to have that full resource of, okay, we can cover whatever we need to cover. It's something that's really great to have, and I'm thankful for it, because when Fred and I first started this, I mean, there were a lot of times it was just Fred and I in an abandoned house, or Fred and I in an abandoned property, and you go, did you hear that? And we're on the other side of the property, and we got to go through that sound to get out of there. Now it's like, hey, there's guys down there. Let's call and ask them what's going on down there.
I've never seen Damon more scared than in a graveyard.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that for sure. Yeah, I agree with you. You got to have the right people. Not only do you have to have people you can trust, you have to have the people that have the same, I guess you want to say, work ethic as you.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of work that goes involved. I mean, into investigating. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people are out there just for the fun of it. They don't realize like when you record an hour session, EVP session on a recorder, that hour can take 3-4 hours just to review, a minimum, because you're going back and forth, slowing it down. And a lot of people just don't want to do that. So that's kind of why, when I did it for a long time, I had a small, I still do a lot of stuff on my own now, but when I did it with my son and a couple other people, my son and I, done it before that, but the other people that would want to be in the group and go ghost hunting or investigating, whatever you want to call it, what they just thought was something glamorous, or I guess they didn't want to do the work afterwards. They didn't want to do the work when it comes to the review or so you have to have those people on your team that are like you. If you got that passion, they also need that passion, or it just doesn't work. So
absolutely. And like I said, to where we're at now, you know this as well as I do. I mean, there were some people that said, hey, I'm dedicated, I want to do this, I'm sold out to doing this. And then we tried them out, and within a month we were like, this is a nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know, what's going on here. And it's not to say that they weren't interested or that they didn't have a passion for it. It's just they didn't have the same passion or drive that we have.
Right.
And I share a funny story with you. I have a friend. He used to give ghost tours over in Gettysburg, and he had a young kid. They called him like an intern or whatever. I gave him a title just to make him feel good. But he was supposed to be reviewing evidence for them because they were using so many recorders a night. They would pay this kid because they did tours. They would pay him to review evidence, and he would just always say he went over it and there was nothing. There was nothing. So after doing that for a while, they said, I bet you he's not even listening to the recordings. And so they did a recording where like the first 20 minutes was actual, investigating. And then 20 minutes in, they paused it and then they recorded him basically firing the kid to see what his reaction would be. And he came back the next day and he said there was nothing on that recording. They said, go listen to minute 21 or whatever it was. And the kid listened to it. He goes, I'm fired. They're like, yeah, you're fired. But I just thought that was funny because that was just another example of what you're talking about. How people sometimes they think everything's like TV and it's not.
Yeah, I listen to TV recordings in my car, driving back and forth to work. Like every minute I got, like I invested into it. And like you said, you have to be dedicated to it. Like you have to commit yourself to doing it. And if you're not able to do that, then there's no part of doing it.
Yep.
Yeah. When I was deep into it, I was an over-road truck driver. So when I come home and we did investigations, I'd take the recorders right with me, back on the road. And I'd, just like I was listening to an audiobook, I'd listen to the recorders going down the road and have a little tablet sitting right there. And I'd write down the time and then go back later and listen to it again. So it takes work and it takes time. And also people that you do investigations for sometimes don't understand that. They think it's, hey, you were here last night, you need to tell me something tomorrow. And it's just not that way. It may take weeks before, you can get the report together and share something with them.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's one of those things too, is that, I find it amazing. People nowadays, man, they have their paranormal findings. They'll have an investigation, and before they get off their live stream that evening, they're telling you they heard X, Y, and Z, and they can document it and prove it. And I'm like, I got to go back and listen to it. I'm not that talented, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just amazing what you see nowadays. It's definitely intriguing, though. Definitely something that, I mean, if you're able to get through your evidence super quickly, by all means, you do it. But if you take your time, I'm a believer in that. You got to take your time with it, because if you don't, you might miss something crucial to your investigation.
Right.
Absolutely.
John, one of the first question I want to ask you, I know you guys have done, locations, homes, businesses, but there was one, I remember you talking to me about it. I believe it was around Waynesburg. It had to do with some rocks. I don't remember the whole story. I think some Indians and
Crow's Rock Massacre.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so the Crow's Rock Massacre. Well, it's been years, but let's see what I can remember. So the Crow's Rock Massacre, essentially, for the purpose of the podcast, there was this group of young ladies and their brother. They were visiting some sick folks. This was out in Crabapple, Pennsylvania. It's kind of on the border of West Virginia, Pennsylvania. They were visiting some sick relatives down the Wheeling Creek. And while visiting the sick relatives, they get down there, they got to come back. Well, when they got to come back, there was a group of Native Americans and a rogue white man by the name of William Spicer. And he was actually kidnapped in one of the Native Americans when they raided a homestead. And when that happened, he joined with them. He learned the language. He was basically, it was like, being raised with them. So he was one. And essentially what happens is the girls are coming home with their brother. And as they're traveling along the Wheeling Creek, they get ambushed. They get ambushed by this, rogue Native Americans, and they slaughter them. I mean, they scalp them. the brother gets away, you know, because he was ahead of him, because he was traveling ahead, and it was a horse and buggy, I believe, you know.
Yeah.
So he gets ahead. Now we've since heard some interesting stories that go along with that, where the brother actually ends up killing William Spicer, and then at the local museum, the story goes that there's a bag made from William Spicer's hide, that he tanned his hide after, you know, because they caught him and they executed him for killing the girls. But the one sister, it's sad, and there are still descendants here from the family to this day. So we do our best to tell the story the best way we can. But yeah, the one girl actually, and it's Betsy, Tina, and I can't remember the names offhand right now, but I mean, obviously, I could.
You can look it up.
You can look it up. We did another podcast on this too. If you want a long form, if anybody out there is looking for a long form of it, we can get you that too. But essentially, the one girl actually lived a little bit after being scalped, like, and yeah, she was in and out for like a day or so, and it's just a real sad story. But that place, that location, man, so packed full of energy.
They took their names and they engraved it in the rock.
Yeah, now there's a monument for them there. The names were, and the big thing why it's called Crow's Rock is these men hid behind this rock, and this rock is massive. I mean, and now to this day, if you go there, there's an actual monument on the location, but the actual rock itself, from where I don't know, I guess it might have been family of the girls, or it was somebody from the community, and this would have been in a bygone era. They went up there with a hammer and chisel and actually chiseled out their names, their date of birth, date of death, that kind of thing. So, but it sits up there. But like I said, that place in and of itself, I'd seen some of the craziest energy-packed situations there. We seen somebody get literally taken off of their feet, like knocked over, hair pulled, just different things. And the other interesting thing about that is that we've heard different like animal calls, or like sounds of animals. Now we're in the woods, so keep in mind, you're going to have somebody, there's going to be a skeptic that says, well, that's just an animal. But there were a couple nights that it sounded like almost like it was somebody making a call and not, you know, it didn't, it sounded like a human making the call, not the animal, as Fred said. But that Crow's Rock is definitely one of those places, and obviously it's become like a local legend, like around here. You know, you can't go stay at Crow's Rock at night. You won't last. You know, for the kids in the area. You know, but I mean, you grew up camping across from it your whole life. I mean, it was one of those things that. But yeah, definitely, I can honestly say that is a location that we got freaked out enough to leave before. I mean, we didn't stay. I mean, that's the thing. You're dealing with the unknown here. And sometimes, you know, I don't care how many years you've done this. And you and I have spoke about this before. If you're a true investigator and you believe that these things are what they are, you know, if you don't get spooked every once in a while, more power to you. But it ain't that simple for everybody.
Right. Well, I mean, you just said that you've seen somebody lifted off the ground. I mean, if there's something there with that much energy, power, whatever you want to call it, then you need to be cautious. You know, you're going to get freaked out, because that's just not. It's not typical. That's not usual. I mean, it's, you know, that's something that just, you know, you see that on TV and stuff like that. But that's something that doesn't happen all the time. You know,
there's such a that's the oversaturation from Hollywood with what perceived paranormal is. Like we months back, we had a table move on us, and I mean, it full on shifted. That was scary because something was able to take a table with heavy objects on it and move it. The stuff you see on TV is just, you got to remember, it's just that, it's TV. But when you actually witness things happen before your own eyes, it changes your perspective on things. It gives you a different look at it. You know, a lot of times people just think, oh, well, are they, you know, oh, you seen a ball move? That's so impressive. It actually is when you think about it. It's like,
and just to touch on that story for a little bit. So I had probably 3 cameras running, and at least 2 other people had a couple cameras, if not their cell phones running and videoing what we were doing. We were doing an ST session at the time, and we heard a couple noises in the next room over, which is the kitchen. And everybody said, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" I said, "Oh yeah, that's something outside. Don't worry about it. I'm just focused on Damon." And then it's just this loud scratching, dragging noise, and we all froze. And it's not like the movies or some of these other videos that you see out there. My first reaction, I didn't grab my camera. The first thing I did is I ran to the kitchen because I thought somebody was in there.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't open up the door. We stopped everything. I got Damon. I said, "You need to go try to walk through that door." And he had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that one.
He goes to open up the door. It's a swinging door, and it gets caught. And he runs right into it. Yeah. And we're all kind of laughing, but at the same time, we immediately start to try to debunk it. And then unfortunately, I didn't grab my camera because it was just, I was in full focus mode of trying to figure out what just happened. It had snowed. It was snowing at the time that this happened. We opened up all the doors that led to the kitchen and checked. There was no footprints. Nobody was there. We were calling people. Like, we asked the truck driver that was in a parking lot next to the house. And we said, "Did you see anybody walk in here?" "No, I didn't see anybody." Unexplainable. But at the same time, I didn't even document us checking the snow or doing any of that stuff because you're so focused on what's going on. It's for you. Yes, we video it so that people can see what we do and what we capture, but at the same time, we're doing this for us.
Yep.
So that's what's important is we know what happened. We saw it. We heard it. If we can capture it and show you, we will, but it's more for us.
Like I always say, you be the judge.
Yeah.
Well, and to touch on that point too, it's like in the world we live in, everybody is so focused, laser focused on clicks and likes and things like that. We may have missed that experience if we would have tried to say, "Let's get everything situated and turned around and go check this out."
Yeah.
Instead of just going with our instinct going, "Okay, we need to figure out what's happening here." We might have missed the entire experience.
Right. Yeah, because you're there to investigate. That's the whole deal. You know, that should be number one priority. You know, top of the list. You know, when something happens, go check it out.
Have you watched that video of us, Les?
No, I don't think I have.
We'll send it. I'll send it over to you after the podcast.
You'll get a kick out of it.
But I'll say this, you know, our biggest goal, and like you mentioned, the biggest thing in investigating is the investigating. Our biggest goal is to do the clearest and plainest investigations that we can, because when we're in a residential home, I'm trying to find answers for people, and I have to be professional in the fact of they need my help. They don't care about my camera. My camera is not, you know, important to them. What's important to them is that their kids are able to go to sleep at night and they're not afraid that something's going to spook them.
Right.
And for so long, you know, like we said, you know, people get too caught up in things that don't matter. And that's one thing that we've talked about as a team as of late. I mentioned it to you off camera earlier, but we've been dormant for like 6 months. I've not taken a case. I've not done anything. And why is that? Because I want to make it mean something in a sense of we as a group are trying to help people. And if we just keep taking on, let's do this tour, let's go here, let's do this location, let's go here because it was on TV. The more and more that we do of that, the less time we have to help people.
Right.
And our whole mission is to help people. That's why we did it, because we had weird things happen to us when we were younger. I mean, that's why I'm in this field.
Same
Well,
here.
well, let's go into that. You know, each one of you, tell us about it. Tell about what you had happen.
All right. So I'll go and then I'll let you guys go.
Okay.
So I'll set the tone for you the best that I can. I grew up in a decent, I'd say a good home environment, good parents, you know, Christian home. Dad was in law enforcement, mom's Sunday school teacher, that kind of thing, you know, good Christian home. But when I was probably, I'd say, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, we moved into a new house. And right away, I started getting weird, like, but you're a kid. So, like, okay, you see something, you're afraid. But I'd say I was probably about 6 or 7 years old the first time that I had seen what I would consider to be some kind of entity, apparition, whatever you want to say. I seen a man, and my parents had like the old French archways. So, like, they're like 6.5 foot, something like that. And this man like kind of did like a duck under to walk under this archway. Now I'm laying in the living room. It's summertime. I'm watching TV. I'm a kid, I'm not asleep. I'm not daydreaming this. This happens. This thing walks in, and I used to call it the man in the suit specifically was the man in the suit. But I remembered very clearly that he had what looked to me like a stovepipe hat on.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he looked like Abraham Lincoln. So I actually drew a picture of this, and my mom probably doesn't even remember this, but we've talked about it before since then. I drew a picture, and as it turned out, the thing that I was seeing, I wasn't the only person seeing these things in this house. And my brother had been seeing things, and my mom had been seeing things. And, of course, you live in this world of, there has to be a reason and explanation. Like I said, great upbringing, conservative Christian home. What do you do when it's this unexplained thing? What is going on here? How do you explain it? And so over the next few years, throughout my whole entire, adolescence, man, things would randomly happen. I remember my mom had a set of praying hands that were on the wall. And anytime something would happen, like we would hear bangs, things would get slammed. Those praying hands would be turned around, facing the wall instead of facing the correct direction. I remember one time, and I laugh about this because still to this day, it sounds unbelievable. I'm a teenager, and I'm sleeping. Again, I'm in the living room. It's summertime. I'm watching TV. I got my Xbox down there. Everything's great. I'm laying on the couch, and I look up at the end of the couch, and the TV remote's like floating. And I'm like, what? I'm like, okay. And I looked down past where the remote's floating, and it looked like this thing was standing there. And I describe it like Mickey in the Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's like standing there, and this remote's just, spinning. And I screamed. And I remember what I screamed. I screamed Jesus. Like I freaked out. That was the first thing that came to my mind. And when I did, the remote flew across the wall or across the room and hit the fireplace and actually broke a piece of the remote, like pretty much shattered a piece of the remote. And, I think my mom came down, maybe both parents. I can't remember exactly. It was parents came down because they're immediately like, they heard the bang and everything. And they're like, what happened? And it's like, how do you sit there and tell your parents that, as a teenager, what just happened to you? They're going to think you're nuts. But so over the next however many years, we seen these things, but I don't know, over time, I just started studying scripture out, and I realized that, and there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that, how hand in hand that their faith ties in with this. And I started studying scripture out, and I started doing research. And then over time I found the Warrens and learned a little bit about them. And then that was right. I call it the boom. That was the beginning of mainstream media for paranormal investigating. Right. That was your Ghost Hunters. That's when Ghost Hunters came out, the original series. And I said, I can do that, but I can help people. I'm not saying that they don't help people or anything like that, but I knew I could help people that were dealing with things like I was. And so, yeah, that's a brief, synopsis of what happened with me. But I know Fred's got some crazy stories. I'm going to turn it over to Fred for a minute. Let him tell you about his paranormal happenings.
Well, let me ask you one question. Let me ask you one question real quick.
Yep.
The thing you saw with the hat, the stovepipe hat, was that a full body apparition, or was that something that, like the phenomena they call the Hat Man? Was it something like that, or?
Well, this is the best way I can describe it to you. After I seen people talking about that, it parallels a lot to what I was experiencing, but I can remember vivid details. Like I said, it looked like he was in like a form-fitting suit, like an actual like a suit, but there was no features to the suit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like my brain said that's a suit, but all I'm seeing is a black mass, you know.
Right.
And then the only foreseeable feature that I could make out on this thing was it had a mouth, and its mouth was like white, almost like a Cheshire cat. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I've since then I've often wondered if it was something very similar to that. And like a lot of those people, I have seen that entity still to this day. On occasion, that will reappear. And yeah, I can say this much: whatever it was, wasn't positive.
Right.
And I can also say this too: is that something? And I mean, I just learned this recently. When my parents moved in, they bought this house. The neighbors actually that moved across the street from them, they asked them one time, they said, do you ever have anything weird happen in this house? And my mom and dad were like, you know, they didn't really want to have a conversation about it. Oh yeah, you know, no, not really. Well, it finds out that when my parents moved in there was like kind of like a makeshift altar kind of thing, like for, you know, not for good, not an altar for good purposes. Let's put it that way. And turns out that the neighbors were actually the ones that lived there before them. So this altar was left there by them. So
Really?
it's almost like they were testing to see if their rituals or whatever had come to fruition. So that was just an interesting little bit. But yeah, definitely it does draw a lot of parallels to the man with the hat that's become, you know, very popularly, widely known now. But yeah, Fred, go ahead, man.
Well, I mean, I got two parts for you, Les. I have an experience when I was young. It's really not paranormal related, but it's actually Bigfoot related. So I figured it would intrigue you a little bit.
Yeah.
I was probably about nine or 10. The house I was born in, it was in Smith Creek, west side, no, south side Waynesburg. And, you know, growing up, playing in the woods and stuff like that, you know, never thought of anything like this, but, you know, we were starting to hear stuff around our house. And I remember my dad worked out of town, and it was just my mom and me and my sisters. And, you know, kept hearing it. And we had neighbors that lived down the street from us, and they had a couple teenage boys. We thought it was them screwing around. And, but here to come find out it wasn't. So like, you know, we down there confront them, you know, we told my dad. And then the experience that I had was actually, I can remember vividly like it was yesterday. And then I don't like talking about it, but I will. I was sitting in my living room. I was watching TV. I was watching the Dukes of Hazzards. I was eating a chocolate candy bar. This is how well I remember this. We have a window off to the right, and our porch light would shine into the window a little bit. So if somebody was to walk on the porch, it would block the light out. So I'm sitting there, next you know, I see the light get blocked out. So I stand up and I walk to the window, and I'm trying to look out the window, and I can't see nothing. Well, next thing I know, I'm looking at its chest or its torso. It bends down, looks in the window, and it's from me to you away. And it breathes and it steams the whole window up. And I run upstairs as fast as I could and went right between my parents in bed. And I didn't say nothing to nobody. And it was probably the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was a kid. I didn't know if I was imagining it or what, but I thought about it. I'm like, man, it literally steamed the window up. It was that close. And so my mom and my sister were actually out gathering firewood. We were pretty poor. We had a wood burner. They're out getting firewood up in the woods. And next thing you know, they come into the house. They don't tell me about this till years later, but they're out there gathering firewood, and they claimed to have seen 3 of them. He said they were hiding behind trees because actually one was bent over, actually looked like a stump because they blended in so well. He goes, when they all looked at them and they dropped their firewood and they just ran. And then of course, we start hearing more noises and stuff at the house. And this is a pretty cool part here. My mom was actually pretty smart. We had a sidewalk that went around her house. She took flour and dumped it on the sidewalk. And then when we got up the next morning, we walked out and looked. There was footprints everywhere, Les.
Sweet.
And I was like blown away. And like she's still thinking it could have been the neighbors. Or I'm like, Mom, it's what you guys saw in the woods. And then, you know, we were pretty poor. We had a wood burner. They're out there gathering firewood. We were pretty poor. We had a wood burner. They're out getting firewood up in the woods. And next thing you know, they come into the house. They don't tell me about this till years later, but they're out there gathering firewood. And they claimed to have seen 3 of them. He said they were hiding behind trees because they blended in so well. He goes, when they all looked at them and they dropped their firewood and they just ran. And then you know, and then it's like the bad thing is like we were going to take pictures, but it started to rain and it washed everything away.
Yeah.
The evidence is gone. And then of course, you know, my dad, of course, we're telling my dad about it. He worked out of town. He's like, oh, that's horse rubbish, you know, and this and that. And then my mom claims that, you know, he was standing on a porch one night, had a little too much to drink. Mom were arguing a little bit. And then she claimed it walked right past him. And she literally grabbed a hold of him, yanked him in the house. And then of course, you know, my dad worked out of town. Of course, our house was on a hillside and our basement was open. It was a dirt basement. And then this was a pretty cool part too. We started hearing things in the basement. And I can remember laying my ear down on the floor and saying, it sounds like a bunch of monkeys having a party. Going crazy down there. They're smashing. You can hear all kinds of noise. Well, my mom had enough. She called the police. She said, we have an intruder in our house. State police come over. She calls my uncle. He comes over. They get out. And you can still hear it in the basement. And they're commanding it to come out. They're thinking it's a person. And they had me inside the door. Well, my uncle told me something came out and it moved so fast across the yard. It probably took four to five steps and it was across the yard. And they were shooting at it, Les. I heard them shooting. The cop and my uncle both had guns and they were both shooting at it. And my uncle said, I swore I hit it. I swore I hit it. And he said he went down to look. They could not find any blood or anything like this. So, you know, we end up moving from the house. It got that bad. We actually moved. We were that terrified. We moved. And then, you know, years later, and of course, nothing happened after we moved, but years later, it intrigued me on what happened. So I did some research and I found out that there used to be a slaughterhouse right over the hill from us. And of course, it's not there now. So I'm thinking, well, what would bring like a big apex predator in? A slaughterhouse, of course. You know, that's what brought him in. And of course, when the slaughterhouse was gone, they might have migrated off. So I gave me a lot of reason. And then I talked to Kevin Paul about this. I told Kevin the same story. And he said, that's pretty wild. He goes, I've talked to a bunch of people that live up along Smith Creek. And he goes, they've had similar encounters that you have. So I'm like, wow. So, you know, and I talked to my grandma about it. And my grandma, she's Indian, you know, very old, very wise. And I asked her what her thoughts was on Bigfoot. And she told me that they are the spirit of the woods.
Yeah.
They're there to protect the woods. She goes, in Indian belief, one of the beliefs from Indians that they are a spirit of the woods. So that's where, you know, I feel like it could tie into the paranormal because my uncle claiming to shoot at it and hit it, never hit it. There was no blood. Well, what's wrong with it? And then they claim that how they can just vanish in the woods without a trace. Okay, well, what makes them vanish? You know what I mean? So, like, it's very intriguing, and that's pretty much my Bigfoot story. And then, of course, my paranormal story is I wrecked a crotch rocket. It was probably a couple years before me and Damon got together. It was going extremely too fast, careless, you know. I hit a deer, and I shouldn't be here talking to you. I'm thankful for the good Lord for keeping me here. And while I was unconscious on the road, I had felt somebody shaking me and telling me to get up and tell me it wasn't my time. And it physically shook me like you were sleeping and they were trying to wake you up for school. It was physically shaking me. When I come to, there's a tire beside my head. There's a car pulled right up beside me. I'm right in the middle of the road. And I look up and I'm just moaning in pain because, you know, I busted my legs. And he goes, well, I'm going to go call, 911. Well, he calls and he leaves me in the middle of the road. And there's these guys that were actually drilling a well up on the hill from where I wrecked. A little S10 truck, a little yellow light. And they saw the whole entire thing. Well, they came down immediately after the guy left, and were asking me if I was okay. And I'm like, where'd the lady go? I said, was there a lady with that guy? He's like, no, why? I said, there was a lady because she was shaking me to get up. I thought there was a woman with the gentleman. And she was trying to get me to get up. Mm-hmm. And but he said, no, there was no woman there. So that kind of made me think a little bit. And of course, I had a mouth concussion. I remember a little bit afterwards and going to the hospital, getting scrubbed. But after that, man, I kind of set my mind in the tone into the paranormal, and I got really intrigued by it. And I started going on my own. I started doing some researching, and then I reached out to, was that Pittsburgh Paranormal Society? And
It's hard to tell, yeah.
Yeah, but it was a long time ago, and good group of people then. And then I got with them and asked them if I can come with them on an investigation. And I was going to go with them, and then that's when I run into Damon at Grandma's house, Christmas time. And I'd rather just go with somebody I knew, family, of course, you know. And that's when I asked Damon, and then we hit it, man. And we went to Hillview, and we got some really good evidence from Hillview. We have that posted on there. We probably got some. The first time out, I mean, it was really good. It was really good. And ever since then, man, it's like Damon said, like I'm on board. You know, our goal is to help people, you know, to help try to figure out the problems, help solve problems, if so be it. You know, we're not trying to take anybody's money. We're not doing that. We're not about that. And as you know, I like to tell everybody, we're not hokey. You know what I mean? We'll lay it down for you. If there's something here, if there's nothing here, you know, the best of our knowledge and our experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, most of the that we do go to help people, it's less of an investigation. It turns more into a therapy session where those people just need somebody to talk
Absolutely.
to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That helps them a lot.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big part of it, a very big part of it. You know, just sometimes that's all they need, you know, for somebody to talk to.
Right.
But Fred, I want to ask you something. But you know, I know somebody's going to, maybe not in the comments, but I know somebody watching the video is going to say, well, because you mentioned maybe Bigfoot being paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
About the flower and the footsteps and the footprints, and there, you know, somebody's going to have to, oh yeah, if that happens, you know, that happened. They got to be a flesh and blood thing.
Right.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize, that's an old school paranormal investigating tactic. Even you know, for spirits, you know, they would put flour in the house and see if they could find footsteps.
Right.
So you know, if a spirit can do that, then you know, how can we say that, you know, Bigfoot can't be, you know? And I'm not saying they are or they're not,
Right.
but you know, it happens even in that side of things too. So I mean, I remember my dad telling me a story years ago that they had some activity in the house, and they kept hearing footsteps coming down in the kitchen, and he was a kid, and he did that. He had the I guess the smarts, or whatever you want to say, you know, to say, hey, if I put flour here, you know, we should be able to see what is walking. But at the time, he didn't think, you know, anything paranormal, ghosts or anything like that. He thought it was like some kind of animal.
Right.
So he put this flour on the kitchen floor, and the next morning when they got up, they found footprints, you know, in the flour. Then the residual footprints after they walked through the flour went through a part of the house and started up the stairs, and you know, it eventually wore off and vanished. But you know, there was nobody there but him, his mom, and him at the time, if I remember right. So he didn't do it, and his, you know, the prints were way too small for him or any of them really. But yeah, I mean, if a spirit has that much volume, body, or whatever you want to call it, you know, that much energy that it can do that, you know, who can say, you know, Bigfoot's not that, and still able to do that?
I think there's some kind of connection. There's something there, because I just get that sixth sense or something.
Well, for me, Les, too, something, and I mean, so many people, just like you said, there's always going to be somebody in the comment section that's going to say, well, it's either this or this. I will state this. Like I said, I've been doing this now. Outsider Paranormal has been doing it for 13 years. I've been doing it for almost 16 years. And I can tell you this right here, right now. Ain't nobody got the answer.
No, not yet.
Nobody has the. If you have clear, listen, I'll put a little spot here for Les. If you have clean-cut, definitive evidence of a Sasquatch and you can prove it to us, we will have you on a show whenever you want to come on the show. Right. Because nobody has that clean-cut, definitive evidence. If they did, they'd be a millionaire. Yeah,
or like I've had people, as far as, you know, ghost investigations, you know, people tell me, oh, I can do this, I can do, you know, I know how this. Well, then let's go. Show me how it does. And I've had people tell me, I can manifest them right in front of me. Well, show me how to do it. And then there's always that excuse of something, some excuse. Oh, this didn't work right, or no, you just, I'm sorry, but you really don't have that skill. You don't know that much. Nobody really know. If somebody, like you said, if somebody knew the answers to everything and knew how everything worked, then everything would be solved. We would know how or where Bigfoot goes. We would know what Bigfoot is. We would know everything we need to know about the afterlife. If there is one, if there isn't any, or spirits, or whether it's energy, or whether it actually is a soul. But we don't. Technically we don't. And I know some people be like, yeah, I do, because I can do this. Well,
Yeah.
well, show me how. Show me how how you can. And I understand that maybe I can't grasp the concept that they have that ability, or grasp. What am I trying to say here? They may have that ability, but I can't grasp how they're trying to show me that ability. You know what I mean?
Well, and this isn't to throw anybody under the bus by any stretch of the imagination, but I always liken it back to, there are people that say they can do certain things, like they can channel these spirits or bring these forward. Historically speaking, most generally, anytime somebody says they can do something to make a spirit do something on command, it's been looked at as something that's frowned upon. It's not a positive.
Right.
It's not something that you're supposed to want to do. I mean, that's just the ability to say, I can make a spirit appear right now. Well, who's giving you that power? Because I know, I mean, you look at any faith, really, no deity or whatever you want to talk about. I mean, I base things off a Christian background because that's what I am. But for my reference, God doesn't want me to sit there and go, I can manifest this spirit
Right.
to pop in front of your face, because that's not how it's designed. That wasn't how it was set forth.
Right.
It is amazing though. But yeah, like you said, though, that is just something that's intriguing. But that's what it comes down to in this field. Doing it for as long as I have, and as long as you have, there's always somebody that just thinks they know better, or they know more.
And there are people. Yeah, I will say this: there are people that have done, I guess you say, more research, and done. There's always that somebody there that has done something more.
Absolutely.
But to be blazing and say, I can do this, I can do that,
Yep.
instead of just sharing their experiences and maybe how, the data behind that experience, or their research into that experience, they're just like, I can do this, I can do that. And okay, well, if you can just explain to me the basics, or the workings of what you're trying to tell me that you can do. Explain that to me. And a lot of people can, and a lot of people get upset when I'm like, hey, wait a minute, let's look at this a little bit, and let's talk about it. And so, but yeah, Chuck, what's your experience, buddy? What happened to you?
Oh, it didn't take much to make me a believer. I grew up in a few different houses. We moved a lot, but it mainly started at a family member's house. It seemed that we always were seeing this guy and talking to this guy, and one day the rest of my family that we always stayed the night at their houses, they started saying that they saw the guy, and they were a lot younger than I was. So why were all of them seeing it, talking to it? And then one day, my grandmother had told me that she had an interaction with this spirit, and it had asked where my grandfather was. She said he's on a hunting trip, and then he just walked away. But whenever she described what this guy looked like, I said, that's exactly who I've been seeing. And it's not just one thing. It's always just been, I've seen it. I know what I saw. I know what I've heard. I've always seen things in different places that I've grown up. I've in the old house I lived in, I swear this house is cursed. Every family who has ever moved into this house lived there for a short amount of time and got divorced. Every single family for like 30 years.
Let me ask you a question on that, because I had a case that kind of it didn't involve a divorce, but it involved, let's just say, some relationship issues. Do you think? I mean, you called it a curse, but do you think you're just using that as a term, or do you think maybe there was an entity there that maybe caused issues between, like maybe, I don't want to say, influenced one of the members of the family or one of the relationship in one way or another?
I think what you're saying is there's a negative energy there
There's
that
at
seems
least
to
a
be
negative
attached
energy.
to it.
Okay.
Because I not that either of my parents would ever talk to it or admit it. I don't know that they've ever seen anything at that house, but I know what I experienced. I know that on multiple times I had walked down the hallway and saw a man standing there. I walked into the kitchen, and we used to have, back in the old days, whenever they had a landline, we hung it up on the wall. We had a chair with a little desk sitting there with a notepad. And multiple times I had walked in there and I had saw this man sitting there and vanish right in front of me.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I just kind of thought maybe I'm just dreaming it. Maybe I don't remember it as well as I do, but I've seen him multiple times in different places, different houses. So maybe it's something with me and not with just that house. But I always felt that house that I grew up in for a while had a very negative feeling in it. It always just felt bad.
And to reference that, what's the old adage? Misery loves company.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about it, okay, all of us guys on this panel are married guys, right? And a lot of times, like in your instance where you're talking about like that specific location where you feel like negative energy was affecting people's relationships and things, I will never put it past the devils, whatever you want to say, for him to get in your ear and go, well, she just ain't the woman you married,
right?
Or he's not as good looking as he wants. You know what I mean? And those little things. And if there's that, listen, we all know this. The negative will do anything it can to make people miserable.
Right.
So if it takes putting a wedge between somebody's marriage or a parent and a child or things like that, they'll find any way, shape, or form to cause that misery to the living. Right. I mean, and that instance, like you're saying, and I often think about it, because I mean, for the reference of what we're talking about here, marriages are failing at an all-time high rate in this country. Right. And it's not like one of those kind of podcasts, but the fact of the matter is that for the most part, I don't think any husband or wife just sits around and just comes up with bad things to think about their spouse on their own.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a negative driving force somewhere there.
The world itself has an energy to it, and if you want to talk about it, really, we've all sat down and talked about it, especially because that's the time we got together. But during the pandemic, that seemed like it was a real spike, not just in ghosts or what. I mean, everything seemed to have a peak to it around 2020, 2021 or so. And was it just the bad energy from the world that we were manifesting it, or what was it? Do we drive it by our own energy and our own feelings? But it's like that time period that happened.
It's that pink ooze underneath the ground there.
Yeah.
Here's something I want to pop up here or right up here. Okay. Danny said, "What about illnesses that are unexplained?" And I'll say something real quick before you guys can. Yeah, Danny. And I get these guys probably will agree with me. There have been cases where even investigators that have had to get away from the paranormal field because of illnesses in their life, and they believe it had something to do with entities that they would encounter.
Yeah, actually, it's crazy that got brought up. Chuck and I literally had this conversation 10 minutes before you called earlier, and I was speaking actually like early documentation of this for me. There's actually a scriptural text that says that a lady was stricken with the spirit of infirmity. And literally, it's saying a lady was stricken with a spirit that was causing her to be physically ill.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm not saying that, that every time somebody gets sick on the field that they're being attacked by a devil or something like that. But I will say, I do believe 1,000,000% that they have the power and ability to make you ill, to give you to bring illness upon you.
Your asthma?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a great example. I was on a location one time, and I was in perfect health, and by the time I left there, I was so dead dog sick, and my asthma had flared up so bad, which I hadn't had problems with my asthma for years before that. But by the time I left there, man, I couldn't breathe. I thought I was gonna need to go to the hospital. I mean, so they definitely can affect you, and that's why it's important to put safeguards in place and to protect yourself at all costs. And listen, like I said, and for those of you that don't believe in it, that is your choice. But for me, I come from a Christian background, so I do what I believe in my Christian background by praying and fasting and things that I need to do before I go into an investigation to keep myself safe, so to speak. Every culture has their own way of doing it, but I mean, that's our team is pretty much, that's how we look at things and we view things. We pray before we go into a location. I mean, that's just what we do, because the fact of the matter is that I, as a human being, have no power or ability over the spirits. Mm-hmm. The only power and ability that I'm given is the power and ability that God gives me to have, domain over these things, and to be able to protect myself and to be able to explain these things and try to figure them out. So, but yeah, that was a great question. I mean, but yeah, unexplained illnesses, they happen. They're the craziest thing in the world. And it's not just, and let's just say this too, it's not just physical illness in the sense of I'm going to throw up or I've been scratched. It's a mental attack too, brother. Mm-hmm. There's been times that, I mean, I can think of a location where I literally, they came out and found me. They came out and found me out in the garden, sitting on a bench, asking me what was wrong. And I said, I just felt like I was so overwhelmed. There was so much pressure on my head that I lost track of time and I just walked out.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and that goes back to what I was saying with my experiences. That entity, it's strange that other family members saw this same entity and described him the same way, but I've seen him I saw him for a long time. And not only was I seeing him, I wasn't directly talking to him or like having a conversation with him, but throughout my life, he would say things to me and they would happen in life. I mean, almost like a deja vu kind of thing. Like he would say it and it would happen.
Right.
Why? I don't know. It was never really anything that was, life changing or life saving.
Wasn't a prophetic event. Yeah.
But it was something that he would say or show me or whatever, and it would happen. And I don't know why. For the longest time, I saw him, and my sister had seen him. And I don't know. It like I said, it didn't take much for me to believe. Once I saw him, it's something inside of me said, this is real.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know what he was. I don't want to say that I can't say that he was a ghost, because why was I seeing him in multiple places? Why were other people seeing him almost the same? So what was he?
Absolutely.
Or what was it, I guess.
Yeah. What was it?
So
Mothman 46, says something here pretty, makes a good point here. There wasn't a spike in negativity during COVID-19. What happened was a lot of people had nothing to do but notice it. I would probably, I'd say I'd agree with that.
And you know what else too? And I believe this could be the case. Not only, I think it almost could go hand in hand. There was more people to notice it. There could have been an uptick, but I definitely will say that, there were a lot of people that had free time on their hands that had never had free time before.
Right.
And, how many people, think about this, how many people had to spend time in their houses that weren't in their houses more than a couple hours a day?
A couple hours time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a couple hours awake, and the rest of the time you're sleeping, and you get back up, go to work, for 8-10 hours. And I agree. Danny also makes a good good point here. In my opinion, you're spot on. I've seen people just not feel good on a location, and yes, prayer does help. My wife and I do the same with prayers and our Christian beliefs.
Yeah.
So he's a great.
Absolutely. And something that I will say in this field for the longest time, it's people have their different beliefs, and you're entitled to your different beliefs. But it's just like when we go to a location and somebody asks me, they say, "Hey, come in, we need help." If we come in and help you, I'm going to give you my opinion based upon what I believe to the best of my ability. I might not always be the best fit for you.
Right.
I got to get people to understand that. Because if you don't believe in what I believe, if I come into your house, okay, and let's say you have a different spiritual belief than me, and I come in and I say, I think you have a devil or demon. I call them devils, but they're what people call demons, okay? If I believe you have something like that and you don't believe in it anyways, how am I to help you?
Right.
It's like, I physically cannot help you. You have to step out and find somebody that has beliefs similar to yours that can help you. I do my best. Like I said, anytime that we sit down and we lay something out to somebody, we say, this is our opinion based upon our belief system. If you have a different belief system, there is somebody in your belief system that can probably help you, but this is what I believe. But sometimes it's one of those things, it's like an opinionated thing. If you're going to ask my opinion, I'm going to give it. Right. I've got to be honest with you.
Well, we have that guy that we still haven't investigated yet,
but
he found out that he was Jewish.
Yeah.
And through some of his own amateur investigating, he thought he was talking to, what did he think he was talking to? I don't remember.
Dybbuk.
It was something, but it was like, kind of like with what my experience was. It was like some kind of angel on his shoulder.
Yeah.
But he was getting Jewish references, and he had no idea why. And then he looked into it and found out that he was Jewish. And it just kind of tied in for him, and he leaned into it a little bit more.
And then it came back to, and that guy was a cool guy. He goes, hey, man, I don't know necessarily what I believe, but if what you're saying is going to help me,
right,
I'm willing to listen to you and hear you out. You know what I mean? And, but yeah, it's in this community, man, it's hard sometimes to try to be that beacon of light in a community that, I mean, let's face the facts here. This community is overrun with darkness. I mean, there's a lot of darkness in this community. Like I said, when I started this, as a team 13 years ago, we called this the paranormal community, and there was para-unity.
Mm-hmm.
It's now an industry.
Right.
I mean, there are very few people that, like, we could sit down and we could talk paranormal with Les, or we could sit down and have a burger and talk about TV. Like, we could do that.
Right.
But there's very few people. It's becoming few and far between that you can do that in this field anymore. It's getting harder and harder. That's why you got to, like I do, I try as a team, we try to surround ourselves with good people that we can trust and that we know and that we can rely on, and vice versa. They can rely on us. I mean, there's been times you've bounced cases off of us. We've bounced cases off of you, and you got to be able to have that. But like I said, the things have changed. Kansas isn't the way it used to be, so to speak. It is different.
Right. Well, and another thing too is a lot of these people that either create teams or whatever, they go clear across the country and go to all these different places and all that, all this stuff, spend all this money to go to these haunted places that are famous. What we've been trying to do is stay local. You don't have to go. Like, we want to show people in our community, you don't have to drive 2 hours to go. We have Crow's Rock. We have these other places. I grew up going to the Greene County Museum over here my whole life. It was, from the first time I went there on a field trip, whenever I was in kindergarten,
it's definitely,
it's just always driven me. Like, I've always wanted to be there. And that was one of the reasons that I got into this a little bit more, is I wanted to be able to go there. I wanted to be involved with that so I could be there. And it's, we want to stay around here and show people what there is around here. You don't have to drive and go other places. You have things here in this community that the beautiful, wonderful history, dark history, bad things too.
I heard somebody say it before. You think about where we're located, and Leslie, you're no different. I mean, you're right down the road. You think about where we're located in the United States. What did they say when people used to want to practice their different traditions and rituals and spiritualities? They were all out on the coast, out in Philadelphia way and stuff like that. Where'd they do? They traveled inland. The people that were different, we were the first Wild West of the United States. This little area, like weird things happen here, and now and you're seeing it more and more. And like I'm sure you've seen the articles. We've seen them. Southwestern Pennsylvania, the Panhandle, Maryland, Ohio. It's a paranormal hotbed. Everyone's talking about where we're at now, and it's like we've known that our whole lives. It's nothing new to us.
And you can look into that. A lot of that has to do with the melting pot of people that are here. The different, like Pennsylvania, you got the Pennsylvania Dutch, and in Maryland, or here in West Virginia, you got the Scotch Irish, and all that culture has come, from the old countries and came here and has been ingrained in our culture, I guess you'd say. So we have that folklore stories, that's been passed down, and which sadly, it seems like that's starting to wane. A lot of people are not doing that anymore, and I hate to see that, but if you really dig into things here in, Maryland, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, that, this area, and in other, I'll say that area because that's the area that, I'm close to and you guys are close to, but all the way into the deep South, we have that, the folklore culture, and a lot of that has to, brings forth, spirits, ghosts, different creatures, different entities, and it has to do with just the people that are there. And I think that's awesome, and you don't.
Absolutely.
Danny has a question here, and I'll bring this one up, but after we do this, I do want to ask Fred to. I guess you made a comment a little bit ago about seeing Damon get scared in the graveyard. I want to hear about that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Danny said, "What's your thoughts on attachments of something and bringing it home?"
Okay, so
we have a ritual for
that. We have a question that's a question we get asked a lot. The first thing I will tell you is that anybody who tells you that they can guarantee you that they're not going to bring an attachment home is lying to you. Every time you do this, you are taking a risk because we are dealing with spirits, and from a scriptural standpoint, spirits are what they are, and they do what they do. They attach. We personally, before we leave a location, we, declare in the name of the Lord, you are not coming with us. We were given power over you through Jesus Christ. We're not going to take you with us. You are to stay here. But like I say, we used to say this when we would give tours. I have a 99.9% success rating, but there's always that 0.1% that the devil's looking for a fight, and you're who he's looking to fight. There's a percentage. Anybody that tells you that they can guarantee you're not going to get a spiritual attachment is just not telling the truth. It's just like one of those things. Now, me personally, have I dealt with spiritual attachments that are physically attached to me? I will never say that we were attached, but I will say, yeah, have I done an investigation and then went home and then something knocked off a shelf or I heard footsteps? Absolutely. But that comes with the territory. I believe that God chose me to do what I'm doing because I can go to, when I hear footsteps, and you know what I'm talking about by saying this last, when I hear footsteps in the house, it ain't stopping me from sleeping. But my neighbor down the road who is oblivious to this stuff, if she hears footsteps, she's calling the cops,
Right. Yeah.
So if I have to take some shade every once in a while to make sure people sleep at night, that's what I'm willing to do.
Right.
Well, that's another reason that with attachments, like you said, we can't guarantee it. That's why we have age restrictions even on just doing tours. And I took my little daughter, who was only maybe 2 or 3 at the time, just talking like fluent sentences, and I took her to Crow's Rock, one night, and she saw this blue light, and then she called it an owl, and I'm looking right at it. I'm like, that is not an owl. I don't know what you see. Why do you think it's an owl? But she always talks to this little boy at the museum that every time we go there, and I try to keep her away from him, but she gets kind of drawn to it. But at the same time, I have to tell her, stop talking to the ghost. Like,
and now keep in mind, because there's going to be somebody in the comments like, he's not taking her ghost hunting. Everybody.
Right.
This is just when we're on location. Because listen, like we said, we spent a lot of times in certain locations, and sometimes if you want to play with your kids, they're running around while you're setting things up, trying to get things together, and
Mommy's going to take them home.
Well, we're setting up, mommy. Exactly right.
Well, and then like the museum, like I said, we go there for all the festivals. We donate money there, and she loves to go there. Every time we drive by it, every single day, twice a day, to go to her school, and she brings it up every time. And she talks to something. She's talked to things at the house, and I have to tell her, stop talking to the ghosts.
Now, for the sake of the embarrassing element, go ahead, Fred. Tell them about the time I got scared in the cemetery.
Yeah, I mean, before we get, the spiritual attachment thing, of course, what I always say is, you're not permitted to come home with me. I do not want you to come with me. I'm married with 3 kids, 2 dogs, a cat, and a snake. And you're not going to be able to deal with it anyways. I try to feed the negativity back to them so they don't want to go with me.
There you go.
But like he said, if they want to attach, they can attach. There's people who actually do sage in their home.
Mm-hmm.
For the salt lines across your windows and across your doorways. Any kind of protection, but is really going to protect you? We don't know. Nobody knows. It's just something of a sense of security that you feel that works for you. By all means, do it.
Talisman,
and like we said, like Damon had said, it's all in what your beliefs are. If you believe in God, then God will protect you.
Yeah.
If you don't, then saying a prayer isn't going to do
exactly.
anything.
Yeah. I've always told people that a lot of it is based on your intent. When I've investigated some homes, I'm like, hey, sometimes it just takes you stepping up and say, I don't want you here. You need to leave. There are times, no, it doesn't work, but sometimes it does. The activity will stop or it'll at least slow down a lot or get let, But yeah, I always tell people, have an intent. Don't necessarily go out there and provoke and confront. Just say, hey, this is my home. You're not welcome here. You need to leave, or you need to leave us alone, or you got, set some kind of boundaries. And usually, if it's something that's not extremely negative, that usually helps. In a lot of cases.
But even with that, I mean, that's if you're upset or depressed, that negative can feed off of that. So even with that,
if you're having a bad day, don't go ghost hunting.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
we have strict things in place. We set this a long time ago. If you're not right, you're not going.
Right.
That's just the fact of the matter is I remember I took a while off. I had my one of my best friends passed away last year, and I did not need to be anywhere near this because and this is why, in my opinion, because there's something negative out there. You know what it's going to do? It's going to try to manipulate me into thinking that it's my friend or it's my grandma or it's my grandpa, because I'm going to be willing to open up and let it have domain and exchange with me. And that opens you up for a whole other can of worms.
It's going to focus on you. That's for sure.
But here you go, Fred. Time to bury me.
All right. Well, I have a couple multiple Damon Keys scary moments. I'll go with the best one I like. We were in a undisclosed graveyard. Just starting to get dark. He's a little bit of hazel light, and we caught some awesome EVPs from there. Probably the week prior to. We got full blown sentences off EVP. Equipment going off on command in the middle of a graveyard where there's no power running through it at all. So, it's unexplainable. And of course, somebody can always try to debunk it. But, we're in this graveyard and we're standing down through there. And next thing you know, we see this big black mask way down in the bottom of the graveyard, going from one tombstone to the next tombstone. And Damon's like, "You see that down there?" And I didn't see it at first. And I'm looking. I'm like, "No." And we're looking. It moves again. He goes, "Did you see it that time?" I'm like, "No, I didn't see it. I missed it, And then we're staring again. Then it moves the third time. And as it's moving, it's coming up through the graveyard closer to us. And the mass is huge, Les. And then the third time I did see it. And again, I jumped up and took a couple steps back, and I'm looking, and I thought it was a person. And you're messing around, you're out. The cemetery was out in the middle of the woods in the country. There's animals and stuff out there, and we take guns for protection. You never know. And of course, I'm like, "Hey, I have a gun. Don't mess around. Like we don't want any trouble. Please just identify yourself." And then it moves again. And at that time, Damon's like, "I'm out of here." And I mean, he literally screamed. He ran for the car. He was so scared he had me scared less. And I jumped in the car.
We flew.
And we peeled out of there like Scooby-Doo in the van, just running, And it was pretty. He kept screaming, "Oh, man." I'm like, Damon, it's okay. They're dead. They can't get us. They're not going to catch us.
You and now you got to think about perspective on this, which was our training and our thought process is this thing is a black mass and it's coming towards us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And your whole life, what are you taught to do when you see a monster?
Like,
you're physically witnessing this thing. And the worst part is you're hoping it is a person at that point.
Yeah.
Your brain's going, okay, this is just somebody screwing with us. And when you get close to us to the point to where I feel like I'm in danger from whatever you're going to cause, yeah, freaked me out.
Damon wasn't used to being in a graveyard. That was his kind of first trial run in the graveyards, and of course it's getting dark. And if we all ever been in a graveyard when it's getting dark, you get the heebie-jeebies, man. And then of course, if something happens, it really enhances it like times 10. Yeah. That was a pretty
good if I'm not mistaken, because we're talking about the same place. We were on location there one time, and there were 5 of us, and there was a flag. You know how like you put the memorial flags out, like the regular, the small run of the mill flags on graves. And we were there, and I noticed there's no breeze, Les. It's dead of the summer, hot as can be, 90 degrees in the evening, that kind of feel. We're sweating to death. Of course we're all out there in jeans and boots because we're not getting bit up. We're being idiots. We're not. So we're sweating and everything. And I see this flag start to move. And it's from, like, honest to God's truth, it was probably 10 feet away from us. And I said, "Are you moving that flag?" And the flag moved again. So we start going, there's no breeze. What's going on? I said, if there's really something here with us, and this freaked us out too, we hopped in the truck and we left. I said, if there's anything here with us, can you unfurl that flag and straighten it out? And hand to God, Les, that flag straightened as straight as could be, like it was blowing in the wind. We got our one guy, Mark. He's a big dude. He throws himself in the back of the truck and says, "Get me out of here, man. This is just..." Because, and you're an investigator. You've been there. It's like sometimes when you ask for something, you're really not expecting it to happen. And when it happens, you go, "Okay, I've had enough for the day."
Right. Yeah. It does happen.
And now listen, honesty. Okay. Honesty here. Now, this is when, we were out there, that's one of those controlled environments where we're testing equipment. We're trying things out. Now, if I'm in somebody's home and I'm there to help you, I can't run. I'm there to fight. I'm there to put it on, man. Like there's been times when we've been in people's houses and we've seen the craziest things you could imagine. We've seen, I mean, there's a photo and we have it locked away in the archives of Outsider Paranormal where there's a hand coming over a hayloft looking like it's going to grab my brother and yoink him up over top of the hayloft. And, we seen that in real time. We seen the photo. I mean, he climbed up in the hayloft looking for something, and those situations, those are the times where you have to go. People are like, "Well, what did you do?" I said, "What could we do? We're there to help people." We stood there and we held our ground. I said, but the other thing is a lot of times there's people that are, this comes with wisdom. And listen, there's a lot of guys out there with a lot more wisdom than me that have been doing this for a long time. But that's one thing I pray to God for every day is I ask him for wisdom and spiritual guidance. And let me tell you, there are some times in the paranormal field where you have to be able to look at a situation and go, this is a bad situation and we cannot be in this situation. We got to we got to level expectations here and figure out how to get out of this mess.
That's like
Right. Yeah. And you need to, and when you're in, like, when you're in a case like that, sometimes it's above what your capabilities or knowledge or whatever is, you know, it's good to have some connections where you say, hey, I can't help you, but I can get you in touch with somebody that can. And I've had to do that. You know, I've had people like back when I first started, which I've only done a couple little, you know, house cleansings or whatever blessings, you know, which I really not qualified to do, but people have asked me and I'm like, well, okay, we'll do this. And I've always said, hey, no, I can't. I mean, but I can have somebody come in that does that, you know, and that's where a good investigator, that's what a good investigator should do, or a team or a group, is have that connection to be able to do things like that to help people.
And that's why, like I said, I have a preacher on 24/7 speed dial. He's there if I call him and I need him. And listen, that's why, I mean, I talked to you about this a little bit. That's why I moved forward in ministry. I've been studying ministry and moving forward because I want to be able to be fully equipped when I come out to your home. If you're having situations where I can say, okay, this is what's happening and this is how we're going to solve the problem. We're going to take care of it. We're not leaving until this problem is solved. And listen, we had a location where we had to call, listen, this is no kidding. This is just an example of something we experienced. We were doing a house that was built pre-Revolutionary War. Okay. Up in the mountains, up around Fayette County. And we're sitting there and we're doing a portal walk session and the different spirits are speaking, you know, and very clearly it says over the portal box, it says, call preacher. And I'm like, what? And I said, what's the preacher's name? And it said the preacher's name, plain as day. So I said, okay, fine, I'll call him. And we're literally in real time on a cell phone. And this thing's having a conversation with the preacher over the phone. On the spirit box. We can hear it. And he says, give me he was down your way and we were up in Fayette. So he said, give me about an hour and 15, I'll be there. And we got there. And he got there. You know what the craziest thing in the world happened was? On his way there, we did our research on this property and everything. On our way there, he found record of an accident that happened down the road. We didn't, for whatever reason, we missed this accident. Because, I mean, it's a busy road. Why would we, every single accident, it's hard sometimes. Things can slip through the cracks on you. He gets there and he says, he says, is so-and-so here? And I'm like, huh? And we hear the homeowner start to whimper because she's in the other room. And we go out. Dude, this girl that died in this car accident and this boy, this was her niece.
Yeah.
So she's crying.
And that's why she was crying. We're like, what's the matter? And she said, did you say this name? And we're like, yeah, why? And she's like, how did you find this name? Well, we said the preacher that came in, he found this, but we had heard this name already on the box. And it turned out and listen, am I saying that it was, because I'm pretty stiff, okay? Am I saying that it's actually the spirit of this boy or this girl or whatever? No, it could have been something trying to portray them. It could have been a million things. But what I will say is you know what happened after that happened? Things stopped. It was like an immediate, we just said, we made a statement. We said the accident was an accident and you can't control that. And it was like the whole entire atmosphere in that house changed. It was like when the homeowner said, we don't blame you, it all changed.
Yeah. And
it was like, and listen, like I said, could it have been their spirit or could it have been the energy of the homeowner that we were feeling their guilt, And that's what we were experiencing. Their guilt was manifesting and we were here. I have no idea, but I know it happened. And it's like so many times we miss obvious signs and signals in this field. And our eyes aren't open enough because we're looking for that golden goose. Everybody's looking for that clip, that golden goose. But if you're not observing every single situation, it's like we talked about evidence earlier this evening. If you're not observing every situation, you might miss the ticket to your answer, the answer to your question,
We could have missed it. Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely interesting for sure.
Absolutely. Well, guys, it's closing in on an hour and a half.
Yep.
Let me see if there's any questions here.
All right.
And if not, we'll, I don't see any. If anybody got any questions, go ahead and post them up there. But I'll go ahead and ask, what do you guys got coming up? You got any events you're going to be doing? Where can they contact you if somebody needs help?
All right. So on the docket right now, we have some things in the shoot. We have some charity events we're looking at doing probably in October. We'll be posting those on all of our socials. Outsider Paranormal SWPA. It's easy to find us. We will be posting those. I know we're supposed to be doing a charity event for someone that's got a chemo. It's going through chemo right now, and it'll help benefit them with hospital bills and things like that. That'll be over in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, Washington County. We're working. We're still doing some stuff with Greene County Parks and Recs here where we're from. We're meeting with them here in the next week or so to set up some events and to check out some different locations that they've been having some questions with. You can always find us, like I said, Outsider Paranormal SWPA. If you get to that page, you'll find one of us. One of us is always willing to answer. A reminder: anybody that's out there that's dealing with the paranormal, we don't charge to come out and check out your home. Anybody that charges is, I believe this, I've said this since day one, it's a disservice. When you're in this, you should be trying to help people. So we always just try to help people to the best of our ability. Again, too, if you're watching this and you say, I don't know how to get a hold of you guys, Les knows how to get a hold of us. If you got to contact Les, that's another way to get a hold of us. We get contacts from all over the place. We go wherever we're needed. And you might be watching this from the other side of the country and you say we need help. We try the best of our ability to help anybody we can. If we can't get to you, we find somebody that can. That's how we've always done things, but that's what we're here for. But like I said, one thing I will say to all of our followers, because you've been patiently waiting, we have been laying dormant, like I said, for about 6 months. To answer your questions, because we've been asked multiple times, we needed a break. We had to recharge. This field is not for the faint of heart, and we all have lives, we have families, we have jobs, and it becomes overwhelming sometimes. And if we're overwhelmed, we're no good to anybody. And our first priority is to our wives, our kids. It's not to this field. But that being said, you will be seeing some things pop up. I have people still asking, hey, where can we ghost hunt with you guys? Hey, are you doing any events? There will be some events coming. They're going to be few and far between. As of right now, we don't have anything scheduled for because I know people were asking us about the Denny House. We're no longer currently doing the tours of the Denny House. It's just they're taking business in a very positive direction. They're doing great things, and we're supportive of them 100%. They've got, that's a great venue, and they do great things there. They've got the restaurant, they've got the weddings, and so they're doing that thing right now. Who knows what the future may hold down the line? We might pop up here or there and say, hey, we're going to be doing that again. But if you're following us and you want to know what we're doing, hey, reach out to us. And we're always, like I said, we're always available. Like I tell people all the time, they say, how quickly can you get to us? When you call us, we do our best to come out and see you as soon as we physically can. Mm-hmm. It might be that you call us on a Monday. We can't get to you till that Wednesday or that Thursday, but we're going to get to you as soon as we can. And there'll be some things coming down the pipe. Like I said, though, the biggest thing that you can expect from us, and I wanted to make this clear, is that our goal, we're very goal oriented as an organization, as a team, and we're really trying to focus in on helping people residentially, with doing tours and conventions and things and all that. It was really eating up a lot of our free time to do those things. So we've lessened our schedule with public appearances and things like that. Not because we don't want to do them, but it's just the time that we're spending doing those things, we could be spending helping people out. Right. And I think what we're supposed to do. So, but
like you said before, Les, I mean, you could do an investigation for 4 hours, but if you have 3 cameras, 2 recorders running, now you got 15 hours that you have to go through. So like I said, we took a break, but we still have footage. We still have other evidence that we're still going through, and we will be putting up more videos on YouTubes and clips here and there on Facebook and whatnot. But as long as you just subscribe to our YouTube channel, we'll be putting new videos up there. You can see some of our stuff that we've done and see how we investigate, really.
And we say one thing, and I'll continue to say it in this field until I'm done with this field, is that there are things that we capture, there's evidence that we will forever have that doesn't need to see the light of day. Sometimes people say, have you captured anything cool lately? Yeah, but it's not for your eyes.
Right.
And but with that being said, just for those that were wondering, yeah, there was a period of time in this last 6 months where I did think about hanging it up. I almost hung it up. I really did. But I will say, as it comes to a public figure, I consider myself semi-retired as a public figure, because that's not where I'm needed. I'm needed on the front lines. I'm needed in the homes. And listen, I'm not only doing this work on the field. I'm doing this work in ministry and things like that. And I'm helping people on my, on our front too. Spiritual warfare and spiritual battles aren't just fought in people's homes. They're fought in churches. They're fought in conference rooms. And, I've got to be able to be accessible for that. So, but yeah, that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. If you were worried about us, we're fine. We're sitting here. We're live and in living color. We're just living life right now. And like I said, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, always reach out to us. But going forward, don't worry. We're still here. We're not going anywhere. We've been here for 13 years now. I don't think we're just going to say goodbye and ride off into the sunset just yet.
Right. And I do have one more thing to say before we finish up. Fred Tennant, Outsider Paranormal. I don't like to say, you be the judge.
Always a cornball.
Thanks, Les.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
Thanks, guys.
We'll definitely be in contact soon.
Well, I want to get you guys back on, definitely for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know there's a lot more that you guys would talk about. I mean, there's a couple things. Damon, I remember you speaking at the event about. I believe it was a demonic thing, a case you were involved in.
Yep.
And man, you had everybody just in shock, or just like, what, so I'd love to hear that, but I think we'll save that for another show.
Absolutely.
We'll dig into stuff like that. Maybe we'll dig in some dark.
Yeah, that one will be a long form for sure. So.
Yeah, we'll dig in some dark stuff maybe on that one. So yeah, let's get you scheduled again. But I'll put you guys in the background here real quick, and I'll say my goodbyes to everybody, and everybody's. I don't know if are you on your phone?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see the comments or not. I couldn't.
Yeah, it slowly shows them. I can hit the chat button here. Comments. Yep, it says good night. A bunch of guys saying good night, and
yeah, there's a couple of them. Really enjoyed the show. I would like to say this is a very interesting show, and thank you for putting it on.
Absolutely.
We'll get you that video.
Yeah,
David running into the door too, because it's freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
I remember you guys telling me about that at the event last.
Chuck will get that shipped over you at some point in the next day or so. Yeah, you'll get a kick out of it for sure.
All right. Well, I'm gonna put you guys in the background. Thanks for coming, and like I said, I want to get you guys back in.
Yeah.
See you in a minute.
Yep.
All right, folks. That's the end of the show here. Damon and the guys, Fred and Chuck, they're great guys. I really can commend how they do their investigating. They do it the right way. That's for sure. They do it the right way. Their priorities are where they should be. Let's just say that their priorities are their. Oh, sorry, folks. I can't talk. I'm having a hard time because I'm not feeling the greatest. But yeah, they definitely do it the right way. And with that being said, I want to say good night to everyone. And let's see, Wes, have a good night. You too, buddy. We'll see you soon. I want to get back down there and hang out with you a little bit. So with that being said, guys, we will see you next week.
But I'm in church, so I'm gonna stop going.
Hey, so craziest thing, okay? We're shooting from my church, okay?
Yeah.
I was shooting my office at the church, and I was like, I took us into the back teen room because I could put a backdrop up and everything.
I was wondering why there's a chalkboard back there.
Yeah, when he's sitting there talking about there's a ghost, right? When we first went on the air, something knocked on the door out here.
We thought somebody.
And we thought somebody, because the church property preacher lives up here, his mom lives up here. I thought maybe somebody was trying to see what we were doing. And then as we're doing the podcast, Chuck's talking about ghosts. We hear something walking down the hallway in the corridor.
Sweet.
I heard a girl singing the whole time, like hitting high notes and
I
like
heard tapping over here on the door. As soon as you start talking about your ghost stuff, like I'm here.
Hey man, it was definitely a blast. I hope your viewers enjoyed it, you know. And yeah, we'll definitely talk about that house in Dry Tavern sometime. Because like I just can't disclose names. I'll be very discreet with what I say, but let me tell you, that place, that night, that time, I literally just seen that guy not too long ago. And I'm telling you, man, that dude's possessed. There's no doubt about it in my mind. He can't look me in the eye, brother.